Okay, let's take a look at number 84 from the 2012 multiple choice. For x values between negative 1.5 and 1.5, let f be a function with first derivative given by as such. Which of the following are all intervals in which the graph of f is concave down? So, what do you need to realize? Well, what you need to realize is that if this function is the first derivative, concavity is derived from the second derivative, pun intended. And so how do you go about doing that? Well, all we got to do now is we're going to just take the derivative of this function and then figure out when is it negative and positive. Okay? I'm sorry. Let me say that again. We're going to take the derivative, we're going to set it equal to 0, because that will help us find when the function is positive and negative between negative 1.5 and 1.5. So what is the derivative of the function? So the derivative of the function is derivative of e to the x to the fourth minus 2x squared plus 1. Remember, when we take the derivative of this, we have to employ the chain rule, which means that I have to also take the derivative of the function inside the function, which is x to the fourth minus 2x squared plus 1. So that becomes 4x cubed minus 4x, and derivative of 1 is 0. So we're here. So now what do we do? Well, now what I'm going to do is decide when is this going to be equal to 0. So we're going to set all of this equal to 0, and setting it equal to 0, take each part and solve it. So when I solve this, notice on the left-hand side, nothing's going to happen. So if I take the derivative of this, if I try to solve this to get it equal to 0, there's nothing that's going to happen, right? So in other words, if you take e to a negative number, it just makes it a fraction, right? If I take e to the 0, it's just 1. If I take e to another number, to a positive number, you just get e or values greater than e. So you'll never cross 0. So the only viable solutions are going to occur with this solution here. So what's the best way of solving this? Factor out maybe a 4x, leaves me with x squared minus 1 equals 0. So 4x equals 0, and x squared minus 1 equals 0, hence x is 0, or x equals plus or minus 1. Okay? X is equal to 0, or x is equal to plus or minus 1. Okay. So, what does this mean? Well, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a number line. We have negative 1, 0, and 1. But you actually also have negative 1.5 and 1.5 as your buffer, right? Because if we go up here, we have to realize that we are bounded between negative 1.5 and 1.5. So, from here, what do? Well, from here, you go into the calculator, you type the function into the calculator, and you figure out what happens between these bounds. So, if you look here, I've done just that. I changed it so my increments are in increments of 0.25, and I start at negative 1.5. So you can see that at negative 1.25 it's negative, so that means here it's negative. At 0.5, or rather at like negative 0.75, it's positive. At positive 0.25 it's negative, and if we look at 0.1.25, you can see that it's positive. So this one is positive. Okay, so we see that we jump from negative to positive to negative to positive. So what is this question asking us? Well, if we remember from the beginning, the question asks, what is it concave down? Well, concave down means when the second derivative is negative, this occurs here and occurs here. And if that's the case, the answer is going to be D, between negative 1.5 and negative 1, and also between 0 and 1. And there you have it. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'll see you all in the next video.